Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Foundation of Light's National Careers Week podcast video. Today we've got Paul Wright, who is our Director of Finances and Support Services here at the Foundation. We want to utilise, obviously, as many job roles as we can and showcase as much as we can during this week to give you an insight into all the different job roles that we've got going on. Paul, how are you doing? You all right?
Morning, Jazz. Yeah, I'm great, thanks.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, Paul, we're gonna start off with just a quick description of your job role. Go into what's its purpose and what does a general working week look like for you.
Okay, so I think the first thing to say is my role involves all the things you don't see when you come to the beacon of light. So I look after the support functions, so behind the scenes, so not the people you meet on reception, not the coaches that you see on the ground. I look after things like the finance team, it's really important, which obviously looks after our bank accounts, pays our staff's wages, two of the big jobs there, and obviously reports on how the foundation's trading. So when it takes money in at reception, what it uses to pay suppliers, so how does that look overall? And then obviously the other support services will be things like IT. So we obviously have a lot of computer equipment that our staff use and our participants use that need things like the Wi-Fi in the beacon of light that people use, make sure it's all up and running fine. And then a very important area at the moment is health and safety. So we're all aware of the COVID-19 pandemic. So what we want is a very safe environment for people when they come to the beacon of light. So that's for our staff and the people who visit. So looking at and making sure that all the right procedures are in place for a safe visit to the beacon, and the work with the foundation is really important. So lots of different things there, Jazz, that maybe you don't see when you first walk in. So there's a whole team behind me doing those things.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And in terms of a general working week, so say Monday to Friday, how does your day pan out?
Well, I do a lot of talking, Jazz. That's the first thing to say. So you can imagine when you've got all these different areas to look at, you need to make sure that everyone's pulling in the same direction. So what happens with any organisation is there's a strategy. So the directors and the trustees or the shareholders, depending on the type of business, will set a strategy that it wants the team to follow. And it's my job to make sure that all those different areas are working towards a common strategy with everyone else. So the way I do that is I attend a lot of meetings, a lot of Zooms, a lot of, that kind of stuff, to sit in on these meetings, make sure we're on point. But I also obviously do work myself other than talking. And I'll produce a lot of reports and papers that go to the executive teams. I'll do a lot of studies. So like financially, one thing we're looking at the moment is esports and gaming. So we're looking to maybe potentially open a gaming zone at the beacon of light. So I'm doing things like looking at, well, what does that look like? How much does it cost? Does it work for the foundation? Will it add to what we do? So lots of different things really in a week, Jazz.
No, brilliant. Esports is a massive thing at the minute as well. So I know a lot of the listeners as well will be interested in gaming and that kind of thing. So that's quite an exciting proposition to go across. We're always a company that I always say is at the forefront of things as well. So it's exciting to come up with, and I can imagine the balance will be difficult in terms of doing things first and doing things right. So it's always like when somebody's done it a few times, you're like, oh, we've kind of got the gist of how it's done, so we can always nick the ideas. But doing things first and things is always quite difficult in terms of getting the balance right to make sure that everything's correct.
And that's right. That's absolutely right. And you won't get everything right. It's the first thing to say. So when you're doing something for the first time or you've got a new idea, don't expect them all to work. But that's not to say you don't try, because that's how you grow and that's how you learn. So yeah, innovation ideas are brilliant.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. I'm keen for each listener to understand how the history of each individual that we have on. So how did you find education? So what were your favorite subjects in school? What were your least favorite subjects in school? What was your attitude to education? And how did you manage your school life?
Oh, there's a lot of questions. So if I take it back, so I was born in Sunderland. So some of the people listening will know of Fulwell Junior School, Fulwell Infant School. I went to, and then I joined Weymouth Comprehensive. Mm-hmm. So that was my school life, all in the same area. I think in terms of going to school, I was very lucky in that I had a good group of friends who I tended to stay friends with all the way through the different schools, which I think is quite important, to have that friends and then people you can trust going through it with you. And I was also lucky, obviously, to have some good teachers. So your teachers, are absolutely brilliant for you. And while you might think some of them are boring and you don't want to listen, you're too tired, you'd rather go on the Xbox, whatever, use that time when you're at school is really important. So for me, having a good relationship with some of your teachers is an important part of school life. So they were really positive things for me going through those school days.
Yeah, in terms of your subjects, what were you really into from what were you keen on going to, the sessions that you enjoyed?
Well, bizarrely, history was a big one for me. So I've always been fascinated with history and like, so why have we got a queen? Why have we got a prime minister? What were the Vikings all about? It was the whole thing. So I loved that, and I found it really interesting. So that was a real favourite of mine. I did like English as well. I'm never going to be a Hollywood actor, but I I loved reading books, and I liked understanding like books and how they were put together and what the point of the book was and what message it was trying to give you. So they were actually the two things I enjoyed the most. So, I mean, we'll go on to what my day job I mentioned earlier, but you wouldn't think history and English were maybe the top two, but they were the ones I loved.
Yeah, no, brilliant. I think that's really important for the young people to hear that what you're into in school might not necessarily be what the job you love is in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, and things like that.
Absolutely. It's not so much I need to do that subject to get there. My advice would always be do the subjects you enjoy. So when you've got your options and things like that, pick the ones that you actually like being in, because you'll probably succeed greater if you're doing something you're interested in.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you very much. In terms of least favorite subjects, what would they have been?
Oh, art. Hated art. I can't draw for topic. I'm rubbish, absolutely rubbish. So I was a left-hander, but I was right-footed when I used to play football. So that gives you an idea. I'm a bit awkward. So my drawing skills were useless. Yeah, I was never any good at art. I hated it. And I hated the fact I was bad at it as well. I never liked that.
Yeah.
And the other one would be cookery. I was the one who burnt the cookies. I was the one who always went wrong. So yeah, useless as that as well. And still am, by the way.
I might put that to a test. I might get in the kitchen of the baking and make some cookies for us. How did you overcome those issues in terms of, obviously you weren't interested in the subject, but you would have still had to go for a certain amount of years. How did you overcome them and how did you get through that?
I just try to, have a go, really. I knew I wasn't naturally talented in those areas, so I knew that I wasn't, going to be an A-star student or anything like that. But there's no reason you can't improve a little bit just by applying yourself. So yeah, I had a go basically, and I joined in. I didn't switch off. I felt like I was still part of the class.
Brilliant, thanks, Paul. In terms of your personal journey from school, secondary school, all the way to your current role right now, what was that? What did it look like? Did you go to college, uni? Did you go do an apprenticeship? What was your journey from school to now?
Yeah, so my plan when I left school, you have a careers talk with a careers advisor, and I decided I wanted to go to uni. Oh, that sounded great. So I started a course with Sunderland College. I was doing like a BTEC. But after 3 months, I realised that I wasn't applying myself very well. I got a lot of free time. And more often than not, you'd find us in the bowling alley or the arcade or something, not actually doing the work. So I had a bit of a rethink, Jazz, to be honest. And I sort of said to myself, I don't think this is going to work for me, even though that was my plan. And I joined Nissan as an apprentice. So I joined on a basic apprenticeship at the age of 16, if you like, joining Nissan factory over at Washington. So that was my route into work. Worked there for 10 years. So the apprenticeship involved 4 days a week at work, and you got a day release to do studying. And I did a bit of BTEC, then I did a higher BTEC, which is like A levels. And then I started to study to become an accountant as well after that for 4 years. So that's how I trained, and that's how I learned on the job, if you like, and studying. And that really worked for me much better than when you found me bowling or in the arcade when I was in college. So again, that shows you that you make these choices and it might not work, and don't be afraid if it's not working to look elsewhere and try something different.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's great advice, because I feel like people sometimes think that once they've made a decision, they've got to stick to it. Especially when it comes to professional life, and that's not the case at all. You can always chop and
No.
change and look at different things and learn different things at all times. Um, in terms of, you mentioned obviously the Nissan apprenticeship. What was it? What was it doing?
But basically, I didn't know when I joined. So there were 5 jobs as an apprentice in the office areas. So I could have been anywhere. So we did some maths tests, some English tests. 600 people applied. And the reason I ended up in finance as a career in accounting was I finished top in the maths test out of 600 people. So Nissan said, he'd be good. He's good at numbers. Why don't you go work in finance? And I didn't have any idea that I would, and that's how I ended up. So the first job they give us when I joined, I thought, right, I'm in finance. I'm going to be doing all these fancy things with maths. First thing they got us doing was opening the post. So I sat, and if you imagine Nissan's a big factory and there's a lot of post, so I sat with a paper letter opener, opening piles of post and distributing them to the right office at Nissan. And what that does, though, it gives you very grounding straight away. Had us like moving archive boxes, sorting out an archive room, paperwork, and then eventually that started to step up, and they started in different areas in finance, and I started to learn all the things I need to know to do what I do today, basically, Jazz.
Yeah.
But I'm very clever like that. So they built you up from the very base, saw that you did a good job with that, and then they kept giving you more and more and more, and that's how I learned.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I love the fact that you fell into that because you passed the maths test and you were the best out of 100.
I could have ended up anywhere, honestly.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's brilliant. That, because in terms of it just coming out and coming round, and you fell into it, and it happened. And look now. In terms of when you did do your apprenticeship, what kind of emotions did you feel? Because obviously you would have been really young at that point. You would have just been little experience in terms of the workplace. What were your emotions, and then how did you manage them?
I was really nervous. So if you imagine, I'm going in this big factory, 16-year-old, straight from school almost. And I think what helped me was I talked to people who, like my dad and my mum, who both did work all their careers, and they helped to calm my nerves a little bit and said, don't worry, going into the lion's den sort of thing when you start. So I think talking to people is important. So if you're nervous about starting something, talk to the people you trust, tell them that you're nervous, tell them what you're worried about, and inevitably they'll give you good advice, and it'll make you feel a bit more confident. And then once you're in there, it's being respectful, being polite, listening to these people, because they're all really experienced, you're not. So it's really important you listen to what they've got to say. And be respectful. I think they're 2 big things. And if you do that, people start to like you, and then you start to make new friendships, and it goes from there.
Yeah, no, brilliant advice. I definitely, communication is key, and don't be scared of being inexperienced. I always thought, especially when I was starting out, that the inexperience was absolutely valuable, because you could make mistakes, and you were meant to make mistakes. That was the whole point. So don't be scared of the mistakes. So then you kind of had that confidence to go and try as much as you could. I always the analogy in my head is always like when you just broke into the first team of a football team, and you feel free. You're just doing all the tricks and the skills, and people are like, look at this person play, and it's because you don't care. You're so excited about being there, and then the pressure comes later on, so you kind of utilize that time at that moment.
Yeah, it's exciting when you first start, and you exactly what you just said. You're allowed to make mistakes. People know that you're learning, and they expect you to make mistakes. So don't be afraid. Be confident in yourself and go for it.
Definitely. Thanks, Paul. In terms of, we've spoke about this one, your career pathway. Was it something you always want to do? Or something that you fell into it by passing a math test?
Definitely.
I love that story.
100% fell into it. I mean, we talked about that already. So again, we said it already. Things change in life. So you'll have this great plan in your head about what you're going to achieve, what you're going to do, and maybe you won't go to plan lots of different reasons, but that's okay. That's okay. So yeah, I think that's the big message that I would give people is life throws things at you, things change, but you change with it.
Yeah. No, brilliant. I love that change with it. Yeah, definitely. In terms of your influences and your motivations, both past and present, what were they and what are they currently?
Yeah, so I've mentioned already. My mum was probably my biggest single influence. So my mum, a bit similar to myself. If you look at her career, she joined straight from school. She joined what you would call the job centre.
Mm-hmm.
Worked for the government and she helped people find jobs. And a bit like myself, she started as an apprentice, and she had worked her way up, in charge of like 300 staff over about 3 job centres in Sunderland. So I was really proud of my mum, and I always trusted what my mum told me because I know she'd been there, she'd done it. So she was a massive influence on me growing up. I saw that she could achieve that, so why couldn't I? Very similar background to myself. And I think if currently we've got a great one. I work for a guy at the foundation called Sir Bob Murray, who's our chairman. Yeah. What an amazing guy he is. So if anyone is not aware who Sir Bob is, I think he was born in and worked his way from an accountancy firm from school, did really well, then spun off and started his own business, and eventually became the chairman of Sunderland Football Club. So Sir Bob was in charge when we had Roker Park, and as you're sitting in one of the buildings, Sir Bob designed and helped to build the beacon of light. Yeah. The same applies to the stadium of light, the same applies to the training ground, the academy of light. He did such a good job with all of that he also worked on St George's Park, where England football team trained, and also he was part of building the new Wembley. Mm-hmm. So that gives you an idea. When you're working for a guy like that, he's a great role model, and when he speaks, you really do listen, because you can always learn from someone like that.
Yeah. And again, I think that's very important. When you're around certain people that have achieved certain success, it's really important that you just quiet and listen. So you can pick up as much as you can just from the words and being around them and the aura. I always think that's really important, that the way people conduct themselves. The higher up people are in positions, you'll see you can learn a lot from them just by watching and analysing the way they speak to people.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah. The way they conduct themselves,
yeah,
I think is really important.
And they're not scary, really, these people. So they might seem scary, but they're just people at the end of the day, the same as you're, right?
Yeah, definitely. In terms of a barrier you face in your professional career, can you list one that has been something difficult to come by, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah. So if I go back to when I was in Nissan, so I 8 years of training while working, which was obviously tough. So that was through my 18, 19, 20, 21. So all my friends were going partying and going to nightclubs and having great times, and I was sitting in the books studying. So but it was because I wanted to become an accountant and I wanted to get that qualification. So once I got there, quite naively, I thought, right, where's this big job I'm expecting? And it didn't happen. Or at the time, there were no opportunities within Nissan for me to progress. So I got a bit frustrated and a bit upset. And I've done all this work. I've stopped in all to study these books, and I haven't got the rewards in my own mind. So, but what I got some good advice, which was, well, show people what you can do again. So I volunteered for some projects. So on top of my job at Nissan, I started a volunteer to be on different project teams and really try to make a positive impression on people by doing a good job on those projects. So while I hit that barrier, by doing a good job, that gave me the experience to get the next job that I was looking for, and that happened for me. So rather than just taking a huff and running away, I tried to tackle it by showing them what I could do.
Yeah. No, brilliant advice once again in terms of experience. It doesn't just come to you once you've got all the qualifications and things like that. And I was naive in that sense when I was doing my degree, very similar in terms of like, all right, now where's the jobs at? And then they didn't come, and I was like, right. And it's a quick, you've got to just switch it quickly in your mind and be like, right, the next thing is volunteer. Yeah. As soon as you get out there, you make contacts and you develop yourself, and you develop friends and associates and things like that. And then that's how you start eventually finding your way. Brilliant. Paul, you play an integral role within the running of the Foundation of Light. What do you do to maintain a positive attitude and show your performance is up to standing throughout the day? Because I can imagine your role, especially your role, you can't really have a bad day as such.
No, it's really important. Obviously, I can't have the figures up wrong and things like that, or pay people the wrong wages. It doesn't tend to go down well. So I think there's a few things you can do, you know, even when you're at school or you're at work. And I think a positive mind and a positive physical aspect is really important. So I would say breakfast is important for me. I get very grumpy. I know I need a good breakfast to start my day right. If you can do some exercise, I think it's really, really important. So whether you're sitting in an office like me all day, or you're out being a coach and you're using a lot of energy that way, it's still good to do things like go for a run, go to the gym, you know, play a team sport. Because what that does is it boosts you physically, but also in your mind, your mental health. It always gives you a lift after you exercise. You get a little bit of a buzz, don't you, Jazz? And you feel it, and you know that you feel good. So at my age, it tends to be walking the dogs more and more than. But when I was younger, I played like five-a-side 3 times a week. Loved it, and loved the competitiveness of it. So you'd often see limping in the office after being kicked off someone. So yeah, I think exercise, diet's important, and obviously a balanced diet. So it's no good eating McDonald's and Domino's all day. You'll feel lethargic and tired. Have it one as a treat, but look at what you eat as well, and just have a healthy, balanced diet. I think that's important.
Yeah.
Give you energy for the day.
Yeah, brilliant. Totally agree. Look after your body, and your body looks after you, is what they're saying. As much as you can, and I think it is really important. And especially when it comes to like the physical exercise and the eating, like you said, you do generally feel better because you've done something for yourself. So you've got no problem doing what's going on out there and arranging and sorting things out like that. But yeah,
and Jazz, you don't have to be like star player in the team. It doesn't matter what your level of ability is, just partake in it. You know, and you'll make good friendships as well with people when you do that.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think it's really important for people to self-reflect. This is something I've learned along the way in terms of my professional life, and somebody taught me this a while ago, and I always thought it was good, and I always keep it at the forefront of my mind to self-reflect on what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at, and what I need to improve on. If you could, when you self-reflect, what are the 3 words that you use to best describe yourself currently? So how would you describe yourself currently?
So I think engaging. So I feed a lot, and I get a lot of my energy and excitement at work from speaking to people. So whether that's the cleaner when I first walk into the Beacon of Light on a morning, or whether that's talking to someone like Sir Bob Murray, you know. So I think engage with people is really important. Don't shoot yourself away. You know, put yourself out there, be brave, speak to people, don't be afraid. So that's really important. We've talked a lot about listening as well and learning. Like really listen, don't just pretend you're listening. Really engage and listen to what people are teaching you in any walk of life, because whether you're 18 or 28 or 68, you'll always learn something from engaging with people and listening. And then I think a bit of self-belief as well is that we've talked about when things don't go to plan, like how you react to that. So it's never too late to change things positively for yourself. So believe in yourself and say, all right, then it didn't work quite as I thought. It's not going to plan. Right, what am I going to do to maybe try something different or go again in a different way at it? So have some self-belief in yourself. So they're things that I think about when I self-reflect.
Yeah, brilliant, Paul. Thanks. And I think, yeah, everything you just said there is really valuable in terms of, and I especially like the fact that listen, like when someone's speaking, actually listen, because it's so easy to think about, I've got a text on my phone, or it's tonight, or what am I going to have for tea, or what am I doing with the lads or the girls on the evening, or whatever, just like, or what am I doing on the weekend. Just when someone's speaking, just listen, because you never know what you're going to pick up. Half the job is, and it's one of the easiest ones, when someone's talking, just look them in the eye and just pay attention to exactly what they're saying. I do think that works really well. And final question, Paul. Overall, thinking about your job roles from school to now, what advice would you give to your younger self with everything, all the knowledge and experience that you've had? So knowing what you know now, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, if I knew what I knew now, I think we talked about that nervousness. So when I first started that first job, like I had fragile self-confidence, if you like. I didn't know what happens if I don't do this. Will the sack us? Will I be rubbish? So I think that's a big thing. Don't panic.
Yeah.
Like, don't panic. And you're never alone. So when you're feeling down about things or anxious about things, mum and dad, family members you trust, whether it's your teachers, whether it's people use helplines and support lines, there's nothing wrong with any of that. So if you're having those sort of down days, don't speak to people, because quite often you'll find once you've had a chat, it's not as bad as what you think.
Yeah.
And I think if I'd done a bit more of that when I was feeling like that, it would have made me feel better. Sure. So that's the biggest thing, I think.
Yeah, brilliant advice. Thanks very much, Paul. There's a question that we haven't spoke about. Actually, it's just popped into my head following our discussions, really. And I hope you'll have an answer for this one. I think you will. In terms of, I always something else I learned early on in my professional career was CPD, continuous professional development, is really, really important. Is there anything that you do in terms of continually developing that you're very conscious of, and you're like, right, next month I've got to do this, or you do it once a month or twice a year, or is there anything that you do continuously every year to make sure that you constantly develop?
Yeah, so the world I work in, we talked at the very start of my work in finance, a bit of HR, a bit of health and safety. So how do I keep up to speed with everything that's happening in those different worlds? So I use, obviously it's great now. When I first started, we didn't have the internet, believe it or not, it didn't exist. So you get that knowledge from books generally, or signing up for a course, a paper course. But now you've got the opportunity with podcasts, the likes of YouTube. You can sign up for newsletters, bulletins. So I tend to look at specialists in those different areas, and whether it's through LinkedIn, whether it's through Twitter, things like that, Instagram even, you can sign up to these different specialist partners, and they'll send you information. And that's how I tend to keep abreast of what's happening. And if there's something really important I think I need to learn about, I still do training. So I go and see my manager, Leslie, who's the chief executive, and I would say, Leslie, this is an area I really need to learn about. And you're asking for them to maybe give you some time so you can learn while you're at work, and they're very supportive of that at the foundation. So back to what I said to you, everyone earlier, you can always learn no matter how old you are. So my mindset, we're a sponge, and for all the time we're on this planet, we can keep learning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say CPD is really important.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Paul. And that's a lovely note to end on, that your mind should be a sponge and you're always learning. Doesn't matter how old you are. So thank you very much for your time today. I'm not going to keep you any longer because, like we said, you're very busy. So I genuinely appreciate you giving up your time, and hopefully our listeners who listen to this take the valuable knowledge you've shared, even if it's this week, or they keep it and they come back to it in a couple of years' time when they need to, whenever. You've dropped some real knowledge there, and I think it's really important from people, especially in roles like yours, to share, and for people to understand that. One, I can advocate this. You're a lovely guy. You're a really nice guy, but the fact that you're on a really high role, and a role that people sometimes think that they can't get to, I think that it's really important to share your experience and your story, and the fact that anybody can get there with hard work and a good mentality and a positive attitude. So thank you very much for your time, Paul. Genuinely appreciate it. And we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, Jazz.
Thank you, Paul.
Speak later. Bye.